Hi everyone. This week in IT, we are discussing a ninth grade English teacher, named Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson is a ninth grade English teacher who teaches 4 90-minute block periods every day. Each period has a total of 15 students, which is a total of 60 students in all. Over the past month, Mr. Jackson's students have been reading a book of their choice on their own as part of the literature unit. There is a Common Core standard that the class has been focusing on, which is analyzing how complex characters develop over the course of a text, interact with other characters, and advance the plot or develop the theme. Once the students have finished their book, that following week, the students are to give an oral presentation to the rest of their classmates about how the characters in the book developed over the course of the story. With this assignment, it also gives them some practice with the Common Core standard of presenting information, findings, and supporting evidence clearly, concisely, and logically, such that listeners can follow the line of reasoning and the organization, development, substance, and style that are appropriate to purpose, audience, and task. In the end, the students will then create a PowerPoint that they're going to present to the rest of the class. With this assignment, there are a few goals that Mr. Jackson is wanting to achieve. The first one being that he wants to formally assess how well the students are able to analyze the character and thematic development, since this seems to be a complex but important skill and it needs to be deeply and accurately assessed. The second goal is he wants to formally assess the students' oral presentation skills, since again this is a complex and important skill that needs to be assessed. The third goal is he wants the students to be able to learn from each other. So in other words, as the students are listening to one another's presentations, they are supposed to be taking notes about the character and thematic development. And then once all the students have presented, each student will then write a paper that summarizes how those literary elements are represented in other novels. The last goal is he wants to not just give the students a grade on how well they did, but specific feedback about their literary analysis and their presentation skills. On the other hand, with this assignment, it seems that Mr. Jackson has some conflicts that he has to overcome. The first one being that the students hate the assignment, since it's shown that many students are either anxious or just don't like standing up in front of the class to give a report. And also the students that are in the audience find it boring to spend just an entire class period on listening to their classmates' presentations. The second issue is Mr. Jackson has tried to make this assignment more interesting in past years, but has found it difficult to deeply and accurately assess their analysis skills, and also couldn't find a way to assess the presentation skills. The third conflict is it seems to be hard for the students to remember everything their classmates present, since it's 15 students in each block period, and trying to remember everything that each student has said seems to be difficult. The last issue is with having a total of 60 students. This assignment seems to take up a lot of class time, but it has also created a large pile of index of PowerPoint slides that are hard to keep track of and be able to grade. So the tech demo that I think best suits the goals and challenges that he is trying to achieve and eliminate is Google Forms. Google Forms in this case would be a great way for Mr. Jackson to assess the presentation skills, because he can give a short quiz to the students prior to the presentation starting, and then once the presentation is finished, they can retake that quiz, and that will show how well they understood. So now I'm going to show you how Google Forms actually works. So since Google Forms is a part of Google, you have to have a Google account in order to use it. So depending on what internet browser you are using, you either type in Google or you already have Google pulled up. So once you have Google pulled up, you'll go over to this square here and you'll scroll down to where it says Forms, and you'll click on that. As you can see here, there are some forms that have already been made. So you can either use those or you can make your own. We're just going to go with this one to keep it simple. So when you are creating a new quiz, you'll put the name of the quiz, and then here is where the students will put their name, their email. Then down here is where you will put your first question, and then you'll put the answer choices. And then the same thing for this. For this is a multiple answer question, so the students will have to make sure that they put the right answers. For this question, this is a type out question, so more than likely, sometimes the students that are presenting would say the answer, and that would be helpful for the other classmates. If not, this would require the students to actually pay attention to the presenter so that they can type out their answer. For this question, this could be something like a quote from the book that the presenter will say, and this could be a question that could be asked, and that would require the students to think a lot more than on this question. So then once the quiz has been made and is ready to be sent to the students, the presenter will send this to Mr. Jackson first, and then Mr. Jackson will then send it to the rest of the class. He will then click this button that says send, and in here he will put in all of the students' emails that are going to be taking the quiz both times. So by doing that, you will type in the email address, and they may pop up, they may not. If they pop up and you recognize them, you'll just click on it and then he'll click send. So once he's clicked send, then the students will then will be invited to fill out the form. They will then have to click on that and it will open. So once the students have received the quiz, they will then, this is what will pop up on their screen. Here is the name, here they'll see the name of the quiz. Down here will be a little description probably. Here, this is where they will have to put their name, either their full name or anything else. Here, this is where they'll have to put the email that it was sent to. so that they are able to see a copy of their responses. Then they will go ahead and go down here to start answering the questions. Then once they get down to a question that looks like this, they will then go ahead and type out their answer. Then once they get to the long question, that's when they will do their thinking. Either Mr. Jackson will require 3 or 4 sentences, a couple sentences, and some examples. It just depends on what he is asking for. So we'll just put so once all of the questions have been asked and everything has been filled out, the students will then hit submit, and then you will go back, and then Mr. Jackson or the presenter will then go back here, and up here you'll be able to see the responses and of all the students and what they answered, what they got right or got wrong. And it's okay if this doesn't look too good, this doesn't look too pretty or anything the first time, but it should definitely look better the second time, since the students paid attention to the presenter and picked out all of the important details. So how does Google Forms achieve his goals? Since his first goal, he wanted to be able to assess how well the students analyzed the character and thematic development. This allowed him to see if the students actually were reading the book and were able to identify the character and thematic development that occurred throughout the book. His second goal was formally assessing the presentation skills. This showed Mr. Jackson how the students are in front of the class by the way they talk, the way that they describe, etc. The third goal was the students learning from each other. By having the students fill out the form the second time, this showed that the classmates not only paid attention to the slideshow, but were listening to the presenter at the same time. And the last goal was he wanted to be able to give detailed feedback. So by having the class fill out the form as each presenter is done, this allowed Mr. Jackson to give the presenter specific feedback on their project, whether there was some things that they needed to change, whether they needed to add, whether they needed to shorten, etc. And then lastly, how does Google Forms eliminate his challenges? So since his first challenge was students being anxious or not wanting to stand up in front of the class, by using this tech demo, this required more thought from the students, but it was also interactive when the presentations were occurring. With his second challenge, which was deeply and accurately assessing the literary analysis skills, with this tech demo, this allowed Mr. Jackson to see how well the students understood the book by their hard work. His third challenge was remembering everything their classmates presented. With this tech demo, this made sure the students remembered what their classmates presented, since because it showed that they paid attention and also listened to the presenter. And then lastly, since this took up so much class time, with this tech demo, the students had the option of choosing how many questions they wanted to ask the class, which then eliminated the number of slides and index cards at the end of the assignment.